Hello, my name is Natsuko Ito, and I'm going to go over my results from Investigation 9. So my site location was at 3395 Shanley Street in Fairbanks, Alaska. The dates of observation were between March 24th and March 28th, and the approximate local time of observation was between 12 and 15:30 Alaska Daylight Savings Time. The NWS data location was in Fairbanks at the International Airport. By looking at the graph, you can see that there were some differences with the data I collected and the data collected by the NWS. The current temperature readings seem to have matched up very well with the NWS data, and the minimum temperatures were usually off by 1 or 2 degrees, but that could just be due to the difference in location. The maximum temperatures were drastically different. I had my station set up in the same place I had it set up for my previous observation, but maybe due to the prolonged exposure of the sun, the station could have been in direct sunlight at some point in the day. I moved my station once I noticed that my data didn't seem accurate to a more shaded area, but the maximum temperature reading still went over 50 degrees Fahrenheit on the 25th and the 27th. So looking at the temperature readings day by day, on the 26th I took my observation at 13:15. The current observed temperature was 34.8 degrees Fahrenheit, and the NWS data says it was 34 degrees. The maximum temperature on the left probe was 36.04 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum was 10 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature on the right probe was 35.7 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum was 9 degrees Fahrenheit. The Beaufort number was 1, with the wind coming from the northeast. The sky was clear, and there was no precipitation. On the 25th, I took my observation at 12:30. The current observed temperature was 32.36 degrees Fahrenheit on the left probe, and 33.44 degrees Fahrenheit on the right probe, and the NWS data read it was 36 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature on the left probe was 50.9 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum was 5.72 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature on the right probe was 53.42 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum was 5.72 degrees Fahrenheit. The Beaufort number was 1, and there was no wind. A quarter of the sky was covered with some cirrus clouds. On the 26th, I took my observation at 12:50. The current observed temperature was 35.42 degrees Fahrenheit on the left probe and 36.68 degrees Fahrenheit on the right, and the NWS data read it was 41 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature for the left probe was 46.58 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum was 10.4 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature on the right probe was 47 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum was 10.2 degrees Fahrenheit. The Beaufort number was 0, there was no wind, and the wind chime in the yard was not moving at all. The sky was a quarter covered with cirrus clouds, which were wispy and streaky, and there was still no precipitation. On the 27th, I took my observation at 13:15. The current observed temperature was 41.72 degrees Fahrenheit on the left probe and 42.44 degrees Fahrenheit on the right, and the NWS data read it was 43 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature for the left probe was 53.24 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum was 20.84 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature for the right probe was 59.18 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum was 21.38 degrees Fahrenheit. The Beaufort number was 2. I could see the wind chime and branches on the trees gently moving, and I could also feel the wind on my skin. It was coming from 220 degrees southwest. The sky was 3/4 covered with stratocumulus clouds. They were dark gray on the bottoms, kind of puffy, and covered the majority of the sky. There was no precipitation at the time of observation, but it did sprinkle a little bit later in the day. And on the 28th, for my final day, I took my observation at 1510. The current observed temperature was 42.62 degrees Fahrenheit on the left and the 44.06 degrees Fahrenheit on the right, and the NWS data read that it was 46 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature for the left probe was 48.02 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum was 21.38 degrees Fahrenheit. The maximum temperature for the right probe was 48.92 degrees Fahrenheit, and the minimum was 21.38 degrees Fahrenheit. The Beaufort number was 2 again, and the wind was coming from 76 degrees east. The sky was clear, and there was no precipitation. So overall, throughout the week, it seems like the temperature slowly increased. So you can see that the barometric pressure that I observed followed the same general trend as the data collected by the NWS. There was a significant decline in pressure from the 24th to the 26th, with an increase in pressure from the 26th to the 27th, and then the pressure started to decline again on the 28th. From my data, the pressure of on the 24th was 1,009 millibars. The NWS data had a value of 1,012 millibars. On the 25th, my data read 1,002 millibars, and the NWS data had a value of 1,003 millibars. On the 26th, my data read 995 millibars, and the NWS data had a value of 994 millibars. On the 27th, my data read 1,000 millibars, and the NWS data had the same value at 1,000 millibars. And on the 28th, my data read 999 millibars, and the NWS data had a value of 1,000 millibars. So looking at the graph, you can tell that the relative humidity had a relatively strong diurnal variation. The relative humidity had highest values when it was coldest, which was usually in the morning, and the saturation vapor point was lowest at those times. The relative humidity had the lowest values in the afternoon when it was warmest, and the saturation vapor pressure was the highest at those times. So now moving on to the TV weather maps. My location was in Fairbanks, Alaska, which is right here in the interior of Alaska. You can see that on the 24th, the Fairbanks area was really clear. There was no clouds, just some clouds on the northern side of Alaska. And I recorded in my data that there was no clouds in the sky that day either. On the 25th, you can see that there was a change in the weather pattern from the previous day. The gray area indicates clouds that moved into the interior with a stationary front right here, which is a boundary between warm and cold air that has little or no movement. And on the 26th, we can see that the interior continues to have cloud coverage with a trough, and that is making its way in the area. You can see that the clouds are much thicker than it was on the previous day. And on the 27th, the interior remains cloudy. I recall seeing dark clouds in my observation. I think we even got a little precipitation later on in that day. And for the 28th, you can see that the interior managed to be mostly cloudless, with thick clouds in the surrounding areas to the north and the south of the Fairbanks area. It also looks like there was some snow and freezing rain just south of Fairbanks, which you can see by the blue and pink colors on the map. And there was a trough just to the south of Fairbanks as well, right here. Now looking at the weather map and the GOES map, the visible image shows thin clouds and the ground in the Fairbanks area. In the infrared image, you can see that most of the clouds in the Fairbanks area appear dark with a grayish tint. This indicates that the clouds were warmer. It could also indicate that the clouds were thinner, so they were emitting less IR radiation. We can also see that smack dab in the middle of the dark clouds is one bright white cloud, which is right here. This indicates the cloud top was colder, which could be due to the difference in altitude. And looking at the water vapor image, it shows brighter, wetter areas from the middle to the west of the state, and it's dark and drier area from the middle to the east of the state. So most of the moisture is toward the western boundary. And this concludes my investigation. Thanks for listening.